This is Steve Adubato. It's the Leadership Hour on AM 970. The answer. They do have the answers. Hopefully we have the answers on the Leadership Hour. I know we raise a lot of questions. I'm here with my colleague and co-host Mary Gamba. How you doing, Mary?
I'm doing great. How are you, Steve?
Doing great. By the way, let folks know before we bring Joe Roth, the President and Chief Executive Officer of New Jersey Sharing Network, on the air. Tell folks how they can connect with us.
Yeah, definitely. First and foremost, on our website, stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com. They can get a lot of valuable articles free of charge on all of these and other topics dealing with leadership and communication. They could also follow you on Facebook, Steve Adubato, PhD, and that's Adubato. That's Facebook. And then on Twitter, it's Steve Adubato. And also, too, if you're listening on the radio right now on AM 970 and you want to subscribe to us, you can do so through Apple iTunes and on Google Play, where you could then check out our previous podcasts on these topics.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that's great about the Leadership Hour, as you listen to us every week on AM 970 or check out our podcast, which we send to you, is the fact that we have all kinds of interesting leaders, folks who are in different fields. And the guest we're about to introduce has been a longtime friend of ours, a colleague, a partner. He has been a leader in the private sector. He has been a leader for a long time in the not-for-profit sector. And right now he leads an organization that is literally saving lives every day. He is Joe Roth, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of New Jersey Sharing Network. Good to talk to you, my friend.
How are you, Steve?
Doing great. Joe, for those who do not know what the Sharing Network is, just let everyone know.
The Sharing Network is an organ recovery organization that is charged with identifying organ donors in a service area that covers most of the state of New Jersey. And then if we have consent, we recover those organs and allocate them to patients waiting for transplant. In New Jersey, there are over 4,000 people waiting for transplant.
To that end, Joe, let everybody know the website of the Sharing Network and so they can find out more information and actually can act on it.
It's www.sharenj.org.
Sharenj.org. And by the way, how big is the team that you lead every day?
We have almost 200 employees here at the Sharing Network, both full-time and part-time.
And Joe, Joe and I know each other even before you, Mary, from a previous life. Joe, your previous background as a leader?
I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for almost 20 years. In the last few years, I worked in the public policy area as a corporate lobbyist for the pharmaceutical company doing state and federal lobbying, and also dealing with corporate philanthropy. So I had a multi-focus position in that organization.
The reason I asked Joe is because his view of leadership is shaped by a lot of experiences. Joe, let me ask you this. How would you describe, and we've asked every leader who has come on the Leadership Hour, including your colleague Elise Glennon, who works with you every day, heads up on the foundation side, also is on our board of the Caucus Educational Corporation, their approach or philosophy of leadership. Do you actually have one, Joe, that you can describe?
Well, my type of leadership is empowering leadership in the sense that I don't micromanage. Every one of my senior leaders and I have an understanding of, what information I need from them and that they should keep me in the loop, but I don't have to know every single minute of the day what they're doing. And so I think it's kind of a hands-off type of leadership, but I have such a good leadership team working with me that it gives me a lot of comfort to know that I have these people and they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, but Joe, developing such a great team just doesn't happen. And for those listening to the Leadership Hour, they're saying, well, that's great for you, Joe, but I don't have such a good team. How would you describe how you've recruited, developed, coached, and dare I say retained such a great team? Loaded question, I know.
I know. Well, back in 2011, we had a little bit of a speed bump in the organization in terms of how well we were functioning and how well the leadership team was functioning. People report to me and myself. At that time, we felt it necessary to bring in a consultant to help us shore things up. We had been reading a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team.
Lencioni is exceptional. By the way, it's Lencione. Patrick Lencioni, a great mentor of mine. Go ahead.
So we brought in a consultant from the Table Group, which is Patrick Lencioni's organization, and we started a complete culture change in this company. And under his management philosophy, the first thing you have to do you have organizational health, but you have a smart organization and you have a healthy organization. A smart organization does everything that an organization does. You have it provides provides quarterly reports. It does the financial stuff. It reaches manufactures things or whatever. But a healthy organization is one that attends to 5 different things, and that's trust, dealing with conflict, commitment to process, accountability, and results. And so you have to first, as part of this change in culture, is to build a cohesive leadership team, which we were able to do over the span of about a year. And since then, we've been following the tenets of the Table Group in how we run ourselves every day, and that is what they call developing organizational clarity. So we created a core purpose which says, why do we exist? And we save and enhance lives. We live by our core values, which is how do we behave? We're dedicated, eager, compassionate, resourceful, and team focused. And then we have a business definition. We steward the gift of organs and tissues. And finally, we have our strategic anchors, which is how we make decisions every day, business decisions. So we preserve the public trust, we innovate, we are responsive, and we maintain a competent and committed staff. And so that's really driven this organization for the last 7.5 years.
So let me try this, Joe. And by the way, Mary, on our website, one of the things I want to do as I listen to Joe is to list some of the great leadership books that are out there. And Lencioni also has a great book. Patrick Lencioni has a great book on, it's not called Why Meetings Stink, but it's all about why meetings stink.
It's called Death by Meeting.
It's called Death by Meeting. And that's, Mary, you know the book.
I do.
That's how I first got introduced to him. But the reason I'm mentioning this is I want to have a section, Mary and Steve's 10 best books on leadership other than, by the way, Joe, do you have lessons in leadership, my book, anywhere around, or you just looked at other consultants?
No, I have your book. I'm sorry, I haven't. I've been reading through it.
Okay, just checking. Joe, here's the thing I've been thinking about. So you've been a leader for more than a couple of years, right? How the heck? So you're really setting up the question, Joe. I've been leading our organization for 30-ish years, and I know this sounds crazy, and I'm not saying this to be self-aggrandizing, which I could easily be. I feel more passion, energy, enthusiasm for new and better ways, innovative things. How can we do things differently? How can we be better? How can I be better? How the heck do you do it, Joe, every day? We were at Joe's office recently. Joe's standing. Joe doesn't even have a desk that he sits at. He got some people to come in ergonomically, whatever, and he stands and does his work.
Yeah.
He's on a treadmill when he's on. He's doing his work. The point, you're laughing, Joe. My question is, how do you keep the leadership, Joe Roth, fresh?
Well, I love getting up every day and coming to work, for me specifically, and I think that's how the rest of my team works. It's our core purpose is we save and enhance lives. How many jobs can you have where you do that on a daily basis? And I think that's what drives me, and that's what drives my staff. And, it's not nobody says that's not my job. Everybody pitches in. We hire for our core values so that people recognize that 50% of any of their performance appraisal is tied to core values, and we manage to that all the way around. And so I think what we have is a very enthusiastic, dedicated staff. And
I'm sorry, Joe, for interrupting. What about you, though? I know you got a great team. I'm trying to find out about you. How do you keep as interested and engaged in finding new and different ways to lead? And how do you do that? People say, I'm done. I'm burnt out. You're the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's the people I'm with, but I always look for a challenge when things start to slow down, or I'm always looking at ideas. I read other
There it is.
leadership vehicles too that are out there to help me. So a good book that I liked that started me before even there's a book called Committed Teams by Musa, Boyer, and Newberry, and it talks about how that how you inspire passion and performance in leadership teams. I've also liked a book by Susan Scott, and this one's old, called Fierce Conversations.
Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. Classic book.
So, those are the types of things. I do a lot of reading. Your book is beautiful, so it's helped me a lot too. So I think that's helped me continue to be motivated and also look for ways to keep people at a high performance. But within the table group process too, Steve, is there's this meeting structure where we get together on a regular basis.
What are your meetings like, Joe?
Well, they used to be terrible, but now
Now?
But now, we have we follow his program. We have every morning we have a huddle where everybody gets on the phone and tells each other what their day is going to be like, so that if we see something we want to we have information about, or one may be interested in learning more about, we hear about that every day. Once a week we have what's called a weekly tactical, which is basically a senior staff meeting. But it's kind of an agenda-free item. Everybody comes with their own agendas, and we look at what was agreed to the week before and for follow-up. And then we talk to, various standard operating objectives dealing with performance. Once a month, we have what's called a monthly strategic, where we just talk about strategic topics.
Big picture topics.
Big picture. And quarterly, we have an off-site where we sit down and we work with our consultant and go through exercises and talk about things that are are bothering us, and so all of those together have helped maintain this cohesiveness of the team.
Love it. Before I let you go, Joe, by the way, Joe Roth, who is the president and chief executive officer of New Jersey Sharing Network, an absolutely incredible organization that we've been proud at our production company, the Caucus Educational Corporation, to be partnering with over, 5 years now, talking about public awareness around organ and tissue donation. And Joe's been a great partner. Joe, before I let you go, you have a healthy obsession with music. How many times have you seen the Rolling Stones?
None. I am going to see them June 17th at MetLife Stadium.
Well, hold on. Who is it that hold on, Joe.
Well, Lady Gaga.
Oh, Lady Gaga. Oh, I know what it was. I said that I saw Lady Gaga and Mitch Jagger at the Prue Center, and that she actually got him to step back because she was that powerful. But you do love music, don't you?
I do. I'd rather go to a rock concert or concert than go to the theater, unfortunately. That bothers my wife to no end.
But every great leader, the point I'm making here is every great leader needs a stress or stress relievers, things that get him or her away from the pressures of being a leader. Fair to say, Joe?
Absolutely. And that's one of them. I absolutely do that. I also have my grandchildren to deal with, which is also keeping me busy. So,
And I know, Joe, you and I have spoken as well that you like to travel as well. And I think that's, yes.
He plays golf in different places around the Joe, you play golf all around the world.
I have, mostly in Europe and Mexico, But my wife and I have, we find ways to relax and decompress that are, involve travel and sports and athletics and things like that.
By the way, when we get off with Joe, Mary and I are going to talk about the ways that we find to relieve stress, and then the ways we need to find to relieve stress. Hey, Joe, I want to thank you, buddy, for joining us on the Leadership Hour. You were terrific, as always.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Take care.
This is Steve Adubato. That is Mary Gamba. We'll be right back with the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour right after this.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
This edition of the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour has been made possible by New Jersey Resources. Mary, it's interesting. Can we do this? Joe was talking about, I don't know why I thought, I guess we were talking about the Rolling Stones and it threw me off. He does like concerts. He does like to travel. I'm not huge on traveling. I'm actually, do the show.
Yeah. You don't like travel much at all.
Only because sometimes I find it stressful.
Yes.
Okay. But I am actually taking my wife and I are taking our kids to another country, Mexico. I don't know if there'll be a wall there by the time we get there, but
hopefully they let you back in. That's the most important thing.
Well, they let me back in is the key.
Yes.
But in all seriousness, great leaders. I know we didn't have this on our agenda, but Joe triggered this. That's one of the great things about this show is that it can trigger different ideas and thoughts that are not, quote unquote, on the agenda or the script. Being a really good leader and having constructive ways to decompress, get away, whatever you want to call it. What's yours?
That's a great question.
So you think you know what's going to happen when we're here in the studio?
Yeah,
Brian,
no, and it's interesting because I have a lot of friends who constantly remind me of how busy my schedule is. And my schedule is pretty much work and then my kids, my 16-year-old and my 13-year-old, getting them to where they need to be and on time and making sure that their lives are where. So.
And you're the leader of that team.
I am. And honestly, that to me is a stress reliever. I put on my different hat and that's the insanity of it all. Like, if my in-laws and my parents always laugh because they look at my family calendar because they often go to the games. And we had 6 games this weekend from Friday night hockey games. Yep. And in addition to concerts and meetings with teachers. But to me, that is my stress reliever. I am present in those moments because I know that they're not going to be kids forever. So for now, I can't say.
Meaning you're not going to get to do this?
Exactly. But that's not to say that I don't aspire. I do write. I do a lot of writing on the side. Really just about the different lessons that I've learned, going through this process. So
when is your book coming out?
We're going to talk about that, actually.
I'm being dead serious.
No, I've got a title. I've got 15 chapters written, so I'll share a lot of information.
And you're going to tell me when? Tomorrow?
Right now, 2019. But it's fascinating the things that you do choose to do. And I chose to do that starting 5-6 years ago because I saw the insanity that was becoming my life. And I said, if I don't start taking a different perspective on this, and it did involve, I have a therapist, and I like that as
Same here.
Yeah, and I love that as an outlet. And to say that that's something that you do to relieve stress, but that is something that I think everyone needs to embrace, and children as well. And my children also have a really great therapist when needed. And I think finding that outlet, everything is different depending upon who you are, what you do, whether it's golf or yoga. I tried the gym thing for a little while, but I found out that was just more stressful. It was one more item on my to-do list.
Really?
Yeah, I took that off.
Okay,
I took it off.
We happen to have a gym in a very small gym in our house, and I also like to go to cycling, which is other people call it spinning. Yeah. This is a bike that doesn't go anywhere. It just stays in the same place. But I was over the weekend. I was at a place called Cycle Bar. Is that what it's called in Montclair? And the music's great. The lights are out, and you're in a class. But I found myself, there are 45 people in the class. They put up the numbers on the board. I was competing to be first.
Wow! Congratulations.
No, I don't mean that in a good way. Oh. I'm sure I was one of the older people in the group.
Right.
But I looked at the list and I'm
like, but you were like up there though.
I was in top 5, and then at one point I was 1, and then some guy next to me, looked at me because they could tell what bike you're on. The point I'm making is that he then was number 1 and I was number 2, and I got peeved, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on 1 second. Wasn't this supposed to be a stress reliever?
Yeah.
Now I'm competing to be first in a class of 50 people. What?
Yeah. And as long as are you enjoying it? Did you enjoy, like when you got out of there, did you say, I really had a good time, I'm glad I did this?
No, are you ready for this? And then we'll go back and talk about this. I exercise partly for stress relief, partly out of vanity because I don't want to get too heavy. Yeah. And probably because I think it's healthy for my heart. I don't even know if it's that much health, work-life balance. I don't even.
But as long as you're doing it, as long as you're not seeing it as something to check off on your to-do list.
But that was what it was. Go back to you.
It was so beyond. I mean, I was dreading it. I was like, how am I going to fit this in? Not to mention I'm paying for it every month. And then I'm like, why am I paying for this every month?
I'm feeling guilty about that.
Exactly. Because,
who's got money to just throw?
To throw away when I'm not even going. And then I'm feeling guilty because I'm not even going. And so to me, a huge stress reliever for me is to go through and take a look at that to-do list and see what really doesn't need to be there.
Activity versus impact?
Activity versus impact, yeah. And we talk about that all the time. And there's a lot of people, I think, who have stuff on their list that they feel like I have to do 10 things today. And those would really just be activities on your list. And if I don't get these done, it is not a success. And I'm going to stay up until 2 a.m, almost like homework when we were in school. And who likes homework? Nobody likes homework.
Sounds like fun.
It's not fun. And it's really taking a real close look at that list of, all right, I only have, 24 hours in a day, not even. I mean, 18 hours of alert awake time. And what am I going to do with it to be the most productive, and not productive in, I checked off all these items, but how am I going to have the most impact at work, at home, in every aspect of your life? And for me, that was a stress reducer, getting that organized in a way that made sense.
By the way, you're listening to Mary Gamba. This is Steve Adubato. This is the Leadership Hour. You may think you've just tuned into a classic self-help program.
And that's okay. Sometimes we are. Leadership and communication
but
is all
there
about
it is.
that. Mm-hmm.
Is that not? And I know I've said this before. One of the chapters in Lessons in Leadership, my book that, if it were not for Mary, would never have been written. And our former colleague, did Victoria help on this book?
Did she help? Yeah, she started. Yep, she helped with this one.
Mary was the key to this. There's a chapter called "You Cannot Lead Others Until..."
You learn to lead yourself.
And is that part of what you're talking about?
It is. I think oftentimes a leader gets confused. They work hard, they get to that top of that mountain, and then they finally have arrived, right? And you think you're there, and I'm here, and this is great. And until you really get yourself in check, and whether that means whether you're leading with an iron fist and you're being too abrupt or stern with your words with your team, or if it's literally taking that time for yourself to be present and in the moment, you need to learn how to lead yourself before anybody else is going to believe in you as a leader.
It's true. And by the way, it's interesting. Not everyone can do this, but I'm going to put this out there. A while back, when Mary and I were talking about this, Steve Adubato with Mary Gamba, the Leadership Hour. Welcome to all of our friends on AM 970. Listen to us on our podcast as well. And this is important for everyone, because even though it may not be relevant for everyone. So leadership, organizational life, flexibility in schedules, right? Mary came to me, I don't know how many years ago it was, and she's not the only one who's dealing with this. There are all kinds of other folks dealing with this. And she wanted to talk about her work schedule. And she said, I need Fridays. I need Fridays to do whatever it is I'm going to do. Now, that's not as if I don't bother Mary on Fridays, because I do, as well as Saturday.
Things need to get done, and you get them done, but you don't physically need to be somewhere.
She's not only not in the office, but it's supposedly her day off. I don't even ask her what she does, but I know she does whatever she needs to do for herself. And about a year ago, I said to Mary, Mary, can I have your schedule?
Yeah,
Meaning,
can I have Fridays too?
Can I try Fridays? And on Fridays, the truth is, and why this is connected to this conversation, is there are things that I do on Friday, and I am thinking about work.
Of course.
I am thinking about creative ideas. But I also go to a stretching yoga class. I work out a little bit longer. I just do stuff that makes sense for me.
Yeah.
I'll go sit and have a lunch by myself or with my wife. But my point is, I don't know why I think I make better decisions and I'm in a better place. And what the heck? And this isn't about, they take Fridays off.
It's not. It could be any day of the week, or it could be I'm actually going to leave at 5 o'clock, right? I mean, that is like one of the hardest things to do. I know everyone that's listening understands that. You get into your workflow, you get into your work day. Next thing you know, it's 5:30, 6 o'clock. You're barely getting home in time to see the kids before they go to bed if you have younger children, or see your spouse or your girlfriend, boyfriend, fill in the blank. But until you take that time for you, and again, that it's not about Friday. It's about
Friday's a metaphor for something else.
For something else. And again, it's not like productivity is going to stop or any of that, but in order to be the best you, the best leader, the best manager, the best, if you're starting out, if you're just graduated college and you're in that millennials group that we talk about so much, you need to make sure that you find time for you, for yourself, to lead. Because if you're not thinking about your own wellness and self-care, you're really going to end up burning out.
It's so interesting Mary mentioned this. We're actually partners with the folks at a medical insurance company called MD Advantage.
Yep.
And a great company. We do coaching, leadership development for them. They're also one of our sponsors and underwriters. By the way, Mary, let's plug the sponsors and underwriters of our organization and whom help make this possible. First, our big sponsor, and I promise I'll come back to this subject, Larry Downs at New Jersey Resources.
Yep, absolutely. And then we have so many other great partners that we work with in executive coaching and leadership and communication where we get a lot of these topics and figure that all out. But RWJ Barnabas Health, we have Valley Bank, Cone Resnick, MD Advantage, as you had said, Gibbons, NJ Sharing Network. We had on Joe Roth just a little while ago.
Hackensack Meridian Health.
Hackensack Meridian Health and Horizon, Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, just among others. And really the lessons that I've learned working with you and all of these great organizations over the years is not only the challenges and the obstacles that any organization, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in finance, business, insurance, it doesn't matter. It's the same challenges, and we're all here to help one another to really just turn those challenges into opportunities.
And to Mary's point, that what I was saying with MD Advantage, this insurance company, their members are physicians, and they actually started a podcast. And the first subject was on physician wellness.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, physician wellness, what does that have to do? So they're talking about helping physicians relieve stress and anxiety and burnout. And we do a lot of coaching of physicians. We have a physician leadership academy.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, should we incorporate into our curriculum, other than how to run a great meeting, how to give a great presentation, how to negotiate more effectively, how to coach? Brian's in the studio nodding his head. How do we give feedback to those around us? Should we incorporate, wait a minute, hold on one second. How do you take care of yourself? Is that a leadership trait?
It is. And funny that you should mention that because if you recall, just at the end of 2018, you wrote a fantastic article about the work-life balance, the work-life integration, which I am
call
going...
it work-life integration. And they said the difference was that balance sometimes connotes you better have 60-40, 40-60,
exactly.
whatever. And also another thing to do.
Right. Or you truly see it as, 50-50, you see a seesaw and you need it to be balanced, and that's not going to happen. But what I'm going to do is on our website, stand-deliver.com, right on the homepage, I'm going to post that column that you wrote on this topic because, yes, it's something that we'll explore here on our podcast, but you could also read about, because you offered some really valuable tips and tools about being present, about activity versus impact, which we were talking about before. You really spoke about some of the key tips and tools to not get burned out. And of course, it's just the tip of the iceberg. But it is important for us all to think about ourselves as professionals as we're also trying to work our way up that professional ladder, regardless of the profession.
By the way, tell folks again our website as well as the other ways.
Yeah.
Listen, Mary and I spent about 3 years writing another book called You Are the Brand, which is why my sense is we are obsessed with branding. And people think, oh, what are you bragging about yourself for? And I say, no, we're just trying to tell you how to find us.
Yeah, and also give something of value. And it's true because
and plus we don't charge.
And
but we charge for our work.
Yes,
we
or
don't
your
charge
book,
for our free stuff on the
free
website.
Stuff. And you have an archive up there of 25 plus years of writing communication and leadership columns. They are all archived up there now at stand-deliver.com. You can go there into the search box and type in practically any topic related.
You got about a minute left. Kind of topics you go under the topic of
relationship building. You can go. I mean, who thinks about relationship building? And it's all relationships.
How about people think, oh, come on, relationship building? You got to tell me about how to do that. I do it every day.
But do you really do it the right way? Are you being strategic? We talk about strategic agility, dealing with change. We talk about the art of confrontation, which is something that all of us need to get better at. We talk about just having conversations like you and I are doing today with a guest on the Leadership Hour.
How many people come on the Leadership Hour so anxious before they come in here thinking, how many people, just today, how many people came in with their notes to read?
Exactly.
And what happened?
Then, they didn't look at them once because it's a conversation, and it's about asking open-ended questions and the art of facilitation. So those among...
Is it natural for people? I know we got 30 seconds left. Are these things natural for people, or do they need to be coached and trained and look at it a different way?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is coached and trained. I think that, of course, some people it comes more naturally, the gift of gab and being able to have a conversation. Others are more introverted or more book smart, and sure, they're very, very intelligent, but they may not have those same tips and tools of how to break the barriers down.
And that's what is on our website. Hey, I know the Leadership Hour may not have gone exactly the way we thought it was going to go.
But that's okay.
Yeah, and that's Mary Gamba. This is Steve Adubato. This has been the Leadership Hour. I want to thank our colleagues and friends and the great team at AM 970, The Answer, and everyone listening to on our Leadership Hour podcast. And Steve Adubato, catch you next time.
This is Mary Gamba. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, where we look at the most pressing issues facing the state of New Jersey.
This edition of the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour has been made possible by New Jersey Resources.
Hi, I'm Dennis Wilson. For over 50 years, Delta Dental of New Jersey has been committed to educating the public about the importance of good oral health and its role in our overall health and well-being. That's why we're proud to support the important healthcare programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. Delta Dental of New Jersey. Everyone deserves a healthy smile. Seton Hall University, where leaders learn. The Northward Center. NJM Insurance Group. The New Jersey Education Association. And by New Jersey Resources. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media. And by Jaffe Communications, where business, media, and government converge in New Jersey.
Welcome to State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. We're coming to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio in Brick City, Newark, New Jersey. It's our honor to introduce, joining us for the first time, Dr. Clenton Coleman. He's affiliated with Holy Name Medical Center, and your area of expertise is?
Internal medicine and nephrology, which is kidney disease and high blood pressure.
But you're also very aware of, concerned about, and want to talk about the fact that race and healthcare directly related. How so?
With the United States, there's been some history of mistrust in the healthcare system. We know that black males as a demographic have the lowest life expectancy of any major demographic group. They're more likely to develop cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure. And these are all preventable diseases. And they're also less likely to be involved in the organ donation process. The reasons for that are many. Partly it's education, lack of access to health care, or mistrust of the healthcare system. So, there's been a lot of race issues, and as we know, race issues in society have always paralleled race issues in healthcare, which has led to a mistrust of the healthcare system.
Let's break this down a little bit. We were talking before we got on the air. 13% of the population,
Right.
African American. 4%
Yes.
of all physicians African American.
Right.
Why is that relevant?
It's extremely
By the
important.
way, why is the number so low?
Well, there's many reasons, right? And
Sorry for asking two questions at once. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I preface to say that getting into medical school is difficult for everyone, right? So medical schools, as we know, have been segregated into the late 1960s. So with that, there's been a late start, and there's only been a few institutions that accepted black students to go into medical school.
Right.
There's also been cuts in medical education financing. Medical school is really expensive, so most students leave with about $200,000 in debt. Also, there have been shifts away from minority health programs and affirmative action. So these young, talented black children aren't able to go through medical school.
Opportunities aren't there.
Exactly, for many reasons.
So a patient who happens to be African American, he or she, and by the way, is it more African American men that are distrustful, if you will?
Definitely.
And we're all things being quote unquote equal,
Right.
big leap, big question.
Yeah.
would rather have a doctor of color?
Definitely.
Because?
There's some studies that show that black males feel more comfortable when they're taken care of by a black physician. They feel more comfortable. They're more likely to comply with preventative care. And that the disparity that we talked about earlier is reduced by almost 20%. So it's a big deal. And not necessarily a black or white thing. I just think patients overall feel comfortable with the doctor, what they can relate to. They speak the same language. There's more trust, there's better communication, and less bias on both sides.
That's why it's important to have diversity in a medical staff.
Definitely.
But I go back to something you said before. We work with the Sharing Network in the state of New Jersey in promoting public awareness around organ and tissue donation.
Yeah.
You said that the numbers of those who happen to be African American who are willing to say, yes, I will be an organ donor, is not what it should be.
Right.
Because?
Well, I think organ donation, it's on the same spectrum as this mistrust of the healthcare system on the part of black patients. There's two types of, I guess when you think of it two ways, there's a recipient and there's a donor. So, you're thinking from the perspective of someone who feels like they've been taken advantage of systemically. Why would they want to give their organ to a system that, they've really not gotten back much from? The recipient part of it is, there's clinical decision-making bias for certain diseases, meaning depending on your race, gender, or socioeconomic status, you're likely to receive less aggressive care. So for example, I'm a kidney doctor. Black patients are more likely to receive dialysis as opposed to a kidney. They're also less likely to accept a kidney because they don't trust the system.
Less likely, if they've been waiting, they've been on the list 3 years, less likely to accept it.
Well, they don't even want to get on the list because they feel like they don't, deserve it or what have you.
Are you, to what degree are you constantly talking to patients who happen to be African American and trying to talk through these issues with them?
There's a lot of cultural bias that we have to, so we need culturally competent providers to address this.
What that means. Say someone's not African American, right? But being culturally competent, not just in dealing with a patient who happens to be African American, someone who is Hispanic, someone who's Asian, someone comes from whatever part of the world, because we're such a diverse community.
We have to understand why patients do what they do. There's some background information, or there's a cultural. So, for example, nutrition is a real cultural basis. So, if, soul food, is common in the black community and is not the healthiest food. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Also, lifestyle changes like exercising, and that's not necessarily the coolest thing to do, but, we're trying to change that dynamic and that thought process that, being healthy, does mean eating better and taking care of yourself.
One more thing I'm curious about. The Affordable Care Act, a lot of political discussion in Washington around it. If the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, were to be repealed in a significant way, you have argued that it would disproportionately impact the African American community because?
Well, definitely. So the Affordable Care Act, there's more patients of different demographic groups who, socioeconomic status, who can't afford health care. They have more access to health care. If you repeal that, if you take that insurance away, then those subset of patients won't be able to receive the care that they probably deserve.
Final question. By the way, speaking with Dr. Clenton Coleman from Holy Name Medical Center, I'm curious about this. You got into medicine because?
I like helping patients. I think that's the most basic thing you can do to help people, right? It doesn't boil down to anything. That's all we have is our bodies. So I think for me to give back to the community and help patients at an individual basis, that's what I live for.
And not understand the connection between medicine, healthcare, race, and racism is a mistake, is it not? Short-sighted.
We underestimate, race as it relates to healthcare system. You have the glaring examples like the Tuskegee experiment and gynecology surgeries on women without anesthesia. But there's so many other reasons for the development of this mistrust is we have to work to undo that damage.
Doctor, we thank you for being with us and talking about such an incredibly important issue. All the best.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Stay right there. This is Steve Adubato. I'll be right back right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
I recently moderated a forum hosted by Choose New Jersey on a new federal initiative. It's called Opportunity Zones. Now, this is a program looking to spur economic investment in communities throughout the country. Many of those communities are, in fact, right here in New Jersey. On the panel, we had 4 experts in economic development, real estate, and, of course, opportunity zones. Here now are those interviews. Chris, let me ask you, we just did this forum where in Newark, New Jersey, Choose New Jersey, in fact, put this event together with Governor Murphy and United States Senator Cory Booker talking about opportunity zones. Briefly, if you were to describe to someone who never heard of opportunity zones, how would you briefly, succinctly, but effectively describe them?
Is a private sector tool to do community economic development by identifying specific locations to incentivize private investors to create new jobs, create new mixed-use development, and to amplify quality of life.
How?
By simply giving investors something that they hadn't had before to invest in distressed communities, and that is a tax incentive. If an investor has money in Google or land property, if they actually sold those investments, because we understand the return on investment of that, if they actually said, you know what, I can sell this, but I can't invest in a local community because the tax and the numbers don't work, well, this program provides that incentive by giving them both a tax deduction as well as a potential opportunity to make even more money off that initial investment.
To those who say, come on, is New Jersey that great a place to do business, you say?
Absolutely, and here's why. The way this program is designed is going to require investors to find projects that actually...
Opportunity zones.
Opportunity zone projects and locations that actually can produce a profit. At the end of the day, the investors are not just putting this money in as charity. This is not a charitable contribution.
They're not just trying to do the right thing.
Exactly. This is, hey, how can I make a buck? But actually doing it in a way that actually is targeted to communities that need the resources the most. And let me tell you, based on the survey of interviews that we've done with our membership across the country, we're finding that communities that have transit access, that have a strong employment base, and have a diverse economy are probably at the top of the list. And guess what? New Jersey is one of the top of the states where people are looking because they know right now the market is demanding for walkable urban places. There's a need for mixed-use income.
How about our workforce?
You have many great universities, and as well as you have a very vibrant small business incubator space that are tied to University of Rutgers and many other institutions here. That is your attribute.
Thank you, Chris.
Hey, thank you for having me.
These opportunity zones, what could they mean for a distressed school district, a distressed community struggling to get its sea legs when it comes to economic development?
I mean, I think it finally just means the way out. It's a transformative opportunity to actually allow them to finally exit financial distress, to be like the Newark people remember from 60 years ago. This is one of the tools, and probably the best tool in a long time, to just structurally change the economy such that these cities become the centers of their communities again.
Why is that, Evan? What's in it that makes it? Because there have been other federal initiatives, other federal-state relationships or collaborations that were supposed to make a big difference. What do you think is different here?
So this is just changing the framework of the economy. That's what's unique about it. It's not a new program. It's not something you have to talk to a bureaucrat about to figure out. It's something that's private sector driven and is going to be something that allows for the investors to make the decision as opposed to a bureaucrat making the decision. That's what's categorically different about it.
What advice would you have for urban communities, leaders who may be thinking about this and say, yeah, it's hard to deal with the federal government, state government, bureaucracy. It's tough, you say?
I think it's not tough. The first thing is just to recognize that this is something you can really get your arms around. If you're a city like Newark or Paterson, you're larger, dedicate a staff member to it. If you're a smaller community, like a lot of the ones in South Jersey, band together and try to get enough expertise around it to really participate and just start packaging your projects. I mean, Newark alone has hundreds of projects that this could work for. And so just figuring out what they are and then getting to investors.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Margaret, you know an awful lot about investing. You make tough decisions about where to invest, why you invest. This particular initiative, this federal initiative that Senator Booker was talking about earlier, that the governor was talking about as well, why is it so important?
It's so important because the communities that were selected, and not just the ones that were chosen in New Jersey, but all around the country, are desperately in need of capital. These are places where there are high levels of poverty. It's not getting the private capital they need, and yet at the same time, there are great businesses, there are great projects, there are great opportunities in these communities.
So it's opportunity zones.
Opportunity zones. So these zones, and really this legislation around these zones, is going to be great to encourage the private capital back into those distressed communities that really need it.
It's interesting, you and your colleagues at Goldman, you got to make tough choices, right? You got to say, you pick and choose, you say no to some. What are some of the things that you would be looking for? Like, say, we're in Newark. We're taping in Newark at Rutgers, part of the Rutgers campus here in Newark. In a city like Newark, or Jersey City, or Patterson, or Camden, et cetera, what would you be looking for? What are some of the better or best practices?
Yeah, so Newark's a great example. So Newark's a place where we've already made 22 investments, and what's really drawn us to Newark is a few things. It has great fundamentals. It's part of a very strong regional economy, great corporate anchors, excellent transit, great location within just a regional transportation network, and we've had really strong partners on the ground, both in the private real estate development community, but also our public sector partners in City Hall, in the Economic Development Office. So we have local stakeholders really driving us to the projects that are going to be the most impactful, and the actual partners on the ground to get it done.
Let's break down opportunity zones just a little bit. Steve, are we basically saying that if an organization makes an investment in a community, an identified community, and they stay there for X amount of time and have significant impact on improving the community, what happens as it relates to capital gains taxes that are supposed to be paid to the federal government?
Yeah, so two parts of incentives in this program. The longer you hold an investment in a community as an investor, the better the incentive. So at the beginning, you get an incentive on the capital you roll into the program. That's capital you would have ordinarily had to pay taxes on day one. Now you don't have to pay those taxes until the end of 2026. And when you do, if you held it for long enough, at least 7 years, you get a 15% discount on that tax bill. The second incentive is much bigger. If you invest in a fund that's investing in these communities and you hold your stake for 10 years or more, and you earn money on that investment over that 10 years, that new gain is tax-free. And so it's a huge incentive to really change the mindset of where investors are looking at their next potential investment.
You know what's interesting about this? Again, it's interesting talking about two United States senators, one Democrat, one Republican, both agree on this. It is rare that Democrats and Republicans in Washington agree on anything and get something done together. So what does that say, not only about the senators who did this, particularly Senator Booker here in New Jersey, but opportunity zones? What is it that brings folks together?
Well, you're totally right that it's rare. It was maybe the only really bipartisan piece of tax reform, which obviously has been pretty controversial.
This was, in fact, opportunity zones, part of the 2017 federal tax law changes.
That's right, passed at the end of last year, and a lot of people didn't know about it until recently because of events like these. Senator Booker and Senator Scott have worked together on a lot of issues. They work together on apprenticeships, they work together on criminal justice reform, they work together on this. So they're unique in senators and finding a partnership to work across the aisle. But listen, I think more and more, and the 2016 election is a great example of that, people are really angry. They're concerned that this story we have in the country that 4% unemployment and record growth and we fixed everything is not the story of a huge chunk of Americans that live in communities that didn't feel any of that. And more our politics are catching up with that reality. And arguably the election of Donald Trump was one of those data points. And I think the fact that this bill passed and got 100 members of Congress from all across the spectrum to support it means that this is something that's penetrating more and more even in Washington.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're laughing because we're old friends. Well, I'm old. He's not. He's Gordon McGinnis, and he's president, New Jersey Policy Perspective. Good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you, Steve.
Now, you're a former state senator. You formerly headed up public broadcasting in the state of New Jersey, and you've done a whole bunch of other things. Now, why, when you're at the top of your game, are you deciding to step down from this role?
Well, the world has changed, number one. So I like to deal with the people, not just at the top who are making the decisions in Jersey, but the people who work for them. And I've found that the people who work with me have very good relations with the staff, the senior staffs in the legislature and in the executive branch. That's important for the work that we do.
Describe New Jersey Policy Perspective. What is and why does it matter as we put up the website, Gordon?
Okay, well, it matters because this is a, if you will, a think and do tank. We put out reports.
Not just think.
So not just think. We put out reports. They're footnoted. They have graphics. but we're there to try and influence what happens in New Jersey, particularly when it comes to policymaking. And we have a point of view that we take every time, which is to take a progressive point of view, to say New Jersey has got problems, here's the problem, it needs to answer those problems, and here's what it will take. Frequently, it involves something that most political figures do not want to hear about.
For example?
Well, New Jersey is now at the bottom of the list of states in terms of its credit rating. It's at the bottom of the list in terms of its capacity to deal with investment in its assets. I mean, we've got a great place among the 50 states. Location is one of them. But if we do not maintain the opportunities for affordable higher education, if we can't put New Jersey Transit back to work on a regular schedule, if we cannot invest in those things which make us a particularly strong state and attract people who are well educated, who want to get good jobs, who need to get access to New York and Philadelphia, our future is grim. And that's where we are right now.
But Gordon, no one's going to disagree with the conceptual aspects of what you just said. By the way, we're speaking with Gordon McInnes, President, New Jersey Policy Perspective, former state senator in the state of New Jersey. By the way, go way, way back in our day, this organization, we did a documentary on how legislation and how the legislature should work. We did it with Senator Gordon McInnes and Rich Backer, who served in the Assembly as well, and it's one of my favorite things we've ever done because it showed how it really should be done by people who may disagree on policy but are not disagreeable with each other. That being said, a lot of what you talk about talks about taxes, tax fairness. There are some who believe that New Jersey is not a state that you can afford to live in anymore. We're losing a lot of residents with dollars to Florida, where there is no income tax, to Pennsylvania, where the income tax, I think, is 3%. Ours is 9-ish, if you will, and to New York and other places. You say what to those who say Gordon McInnes and some of his friends want to raise New Jersey state income tax to do a lot of the things you just said? Long-winded question, but I know you have the answer.
Well, first of all, we have a high tax rate compared to most states. You mentioned New York. That's the second state for when people leave New Jersey, that's where they go. And they largely go to New York City, where the taxes are much higher than they are in New Jersey. Why are they higher?
No, why do we lose them?
We lose them because New York City has benefits that we can't match in terms of everything.
Being New York City.
Yeah, being New York City. So what we have are the assets that draw people who want to be in the center of business and finance and everything else. And they want to live here. And the cost of that is, think about it, we've got 9 million people living in the 7th smallest state in the Union. We have the highest number of residents per square mile of any state, and whoever's in second isn't even close. And there's a reason for that. And location, access to New York, access to Philadelphia, access to the Northeast, that's all a part of it.
Senator, excuse me, Gordon, still Senator McInnes, you still have advocated that we should raise taxes on millionaires. And the negotiation that took place between Governor Murphy and some in the legislature, particularly Senate President Sweeney, was that they wouldn't raise taxes on millionaires. They would raise it on those who earned $5 million or more. You don't like that. You think it should have been on millionaires.
Yes.
What about if we lost those folks?
We don't. All right, we do, yes. Everybody has a story.
Yes, anecdotally, but statistically.
Statistically, the number of people who earn at least $1 million a year and pay taxes on those earnings, that number has been rising steadily since the Great Depression, Great Recession.
Right, of 2008-9.
Right. So, in fact, people are still here, even though taxes on their $1 million plus are higher than they would be if they were in Iowa or in Wyoming.
Why tempt fate by raising it?
Because the record is that if we do not, we don't have the revenues that we need to invest in the assets that make New Jersey an enviable place.
We need that revenue.
We need the revenue.
Do you think that the middle, policy perspective, your organization came out with this, it was a good one. Who pays analysis, released the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy. You found that families with annual incomes of $40,000 to $80,000 pay way more than their fair share of taxes.
Right.
Talk about it.
Okay, so here's what we have. When you take all the taxes in place, property taxes, or the property taxes that renters have to pay,
This is after a $10,000 cap with the federal government on state and local taxes,
Right,
but go ahead.
right. We have a sales tax. When you take those taxes, property and sales tax, those affect people in the middle a lot more than they affect people at the top.
That's right, because they pay the same amount.
They pay the same amount on whatever they're buying, and they're not buying Aston Martins or Lamborghinis.
They're buying coats. They're buying,
Yeah.
and they're coats. Are they included or not?
No.
I got that wrong. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No sales tax on clothing. But in fact, things that they need every day, they buy, and there's
Refrigerator.
They pay a tax.
And so someone who's making $1 million, someone who's making $45,000 are paying the same thing.
Exactly
Not
right.
fair?
And their refrigerator may be more modest if they're making $45,000 a year.
But conceptually, not fair.
Not fair. Not fair. And so we need to catch up. And we need to make this a place where people who are in the middle and who are struggling, because this is a high-cost place. There is no place else where the property taxes are higher. There are very few places where the cost of a residence is higher. So all of that is necessary if you're raising a family, but we give you this benefit. If you're raising a family in New Jersey, you're going to the public schools that are second best in the nation. Only Massachusetts kids do better on the national test than New Jersey kids. And that's a great magnet.
It's a good deal. Before I let you out of here, by the way, it shows how much I know that I thought clothing was sales tax.
Yeah.
Now, leave it alone, all right? Edit that out. Before I let you go, you've always been someone, as I said, we did that documentary on you and Rich Bagger, civil, respectful, regardless of how people disagree on issues. The tone and tenor of political discourse in our nation, 30 seconds or less.
Oh, my God. We've never seen anything like it. And we've never seen anything like it because we have a president who behaves in a way that no previous president has behaved. And that person has set in motion all sorts of things that do great damage, particularly to places like New Jersey, but to the entire nation.
Gordon McGinnis, who was a former senator, but after a few years is leaving as president, New Jersey policy perspective, he continues to make his mark in this state. And I want to thank you for your service. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Steve.
All the best.
Pleasure to be here.
This is State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. Let's continue the conversation on Twitter at Steve Adubato. And I promise we'll see you next week. Thanks.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Seton Hall University, the Northward Center, NJM Insurance Group, the New Jersey Education Association, and by New Jersey Resources.
I could feel my lungs fill with oxygen, and I got my life back.
The Sharing Network means to me hope, life, and everything.
The Sharing Network was a lifeline to me when I really needed it.
We are an organ procurement organization.
The core purpose of the New Jersey Sharing Network is to save and enhance lives.
To honor those who gave.
Pay tribute to those who received.
Offer hope to those who continue to wait.
And remember the lives lost while waiting.
For the gift of life.
I could feel my lungs fill with oxygen, and I got my life back.
The Sharing Network means to me hope, life, and everything.
The Sharing Network was a lifeline to me when I really needed it.
We are an organ procurement organization.
The core purpose of the New Jersey Sharing Network is to save and enhance lives.
To honor those who gave.
Pay tribute to those who received.
Offer hope to those who continue to wait.
And remember the lives lost while waiting.
For the gift of life.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
This edition of the Steve Adubato Leadership Hour has been made possible by New Jersey Resources.